Have you heard about climate refugees? You will in the next few years. The changing climate is making some countries unlivable. The oceans are rising, cyclones are being supercharged, rainfall is either too much or too little. So what do people do? They flee. We know that conflicts create refugees. Well, climate change is doing the same now. Many countries are preparing for this eventuality, like Australia and Tuvalu. They've signed a new bilateral treaty. It says Australia will offer refuge to Tuvalu citizens affected by climate change. In other words, Canberra will take in climate refugees. How many? Up to 280 visas will be issued every year. These people can live, work and study in Australia. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese called it a groundbreaking treaty. The Tuvalu Prime Minister called it a beacon of hope.
This partnership stands as a beacon of hope, signifying not just a milestone, but a giant leap forward in our joint mission to ensure regional stability, sustainability, and prosperity.
It's a big deal for Tuvalu. We are talking about a low-lying country. Its average height is 3 meters above sea level. That's just under 10 feet. So if ocean levels rise, Tuvalu is at major risk. Its islands could sink below the sea. And the government knows this. Last year, they decided to create a digital replica of their country, a Tuvalu in the metaverse. The idea was to conserve the country's history and culture. Even if the land disappears, the memory would remain. Tells you how serious this problem is, which is why Australia is offering this help, and this offer is so appealing. Tuvalu is home to more than 11,000 people. Australia is taking 280 every year. That's around 2.5% of their population. Of course, there is politics too. Tuvalu is one of the handful of countries that still recognize Taiwan. They do not have relations with Beijing, so Canberra is trying to lock in their support. But for the moment, let's keep the politics out. Tonight, let's look at the problem of climate refugees. How big is it? One study says we could have 1.2 billion climate refugees by 2050. 1.2 billion. Every year, around 21 million people are being displaced by floods, by storms, by droughts and wildfires. Let me also show you the worst affected countries. In 2019, India had the most climate refugees, more than 5 million people. These are Indians displaced internally by weather events. The Philippines had 4 million. So did Bangladesh and China. Then came America with around 1 million. What exactly is driving these people out? Rising sea level is a major problem. 30 years ago, around 160 million people were at risk in coastal areas. And now it is 260 million people. 90% of them live in poor and developing nations. They do not have the money to relocate or to invest in new technology. Take Bangladesh, for example. By 2050, 17% of the country could be submerged. Imagine that, 17% of a country gone. And along with it, the homes of 20 million people. So where do they go? They become climate refugees. And for the record, Bangladesh makes up just 0.3% of global emissions. Yet they face more consequences. Same in Africa. Last year, around 7 million Africans were internally displaced. Again, the reason was climate. By 2050, half of all climate refugees could be Africans. And what is Africa's share in emissions? Just 4%. So the situation is pretty bad. The countries who triggered climate change are not as affected. It's the developing nations that are suffering. What's the solution? Well, Australia's idea is an interesting one, to take in people and give them opportunities. But not every country will be willing to do this. So do the next best thing. If you can't open your borders, open your wallet. Fund climate action in programs in affected nations. Also cut down your own emissions. It may not solve the problem, but it's a good start. Plus, we have to define who a climate refugee is. Right now, the United Nations has no definition. Even the Refugee Convention of 1951 does not include climate change. And you cannot help what you cannot define. It won't be easy to create consensus on this issue, But then again, nothing about climate action has been easy so far.